Hello, 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 everyone. Another episode of the CEO Next Door. You are so lucky to be here, and we're lucky to be here too. So, welcome, welcome. Uh, I am your host, Mike Mayer. I'm the CEO of Main Event Digital, and I'm here with my co host, Donovan Morrison, our COO. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Stacy Edgar, and she is the co-founder and CEO of Venteur. Did I get that right?
You've got that right. And thanks so much for having me,
Yeah.
Mike.
Venteur.
Yes.
Just for the record. Okay.
Yeah.
So Stacy, welcome. And maybe we can just start with getting to know you a little bit. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Venteur. We are a startup looking to change American healthcare. And what we're doing is basically uncoupling the employer from healthcare and enabling individuals to choose from themselves. And we got started about 18 months ago, and it came from my own experience. I was a small business owner. My parents have been small business owners. My brother, who's also my co-founder, has this is startup number 3 for him. So we come from an entrepreneurial family and have seen how healthcare today doesn't quite fit for a lot of Americans, and that's what we're looking to change.
I
Interesting. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to understand how your business works. It
Sure.
sounds very different than
Yeah.
anything I've heard of. Yes.
Yeah,
Tell
so
us.
it's actually quite simple. So, for jobs or businesses you may have held or run, you probably every year have been offered a health plan from HR
Mhm.
and maybe 2 to 3 options.
Sure.
And the employer buys that plan and offers it to the employee. So under our
Okay.
model, the employer, instead of buying a plan, they set a budget. They decide how much money they want to give. And then what we do is what we help each person to spend that money. So each person gets to pick from the literally hundreds of plans in the
Mm.
market and pick what's best for them and own that decision instead of having somebody else pick for you. And the perk for the business is they save 20 to 30% on cost. It's a huge cost savings. And the perk for the
Oh,
employees, they often get to keep the doctor they want, they get to personalize, and they also get a lower out of pocket costs in many situations as well. So
and are we talking, is this SaaS model, software as a
yes.
service? Okay.
Yes. So you can think
Got
of
it.
us as a SaaS and part marketplace as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
And I know, when a company does a group buying through, they're buying policies for their entire business, thousands of people potentially, they're getting better rates. So is this not for companies of that size? Is this more for smaller businesses?
It's for companies of all sizes actually. So that's actually there's a shift in the market that's taking place. And now, you know, if you're buying as an individual, you're usually in a public pool of that's in the millions. So unless you're an employer of the millions, actually this risk pool is stronger than the what even employers might have. We've seen businesses, large businesses, save literally millions of dollars by switching to this model. So it is a whole, all businesses, not just small ones. But it does flip on its head a lot of the thinking that is common to insurance today.
Okay. And for the money that is dedicated to plans, is it just plans, or do you also incorporate dental, vision, other medication expenses? What is the scope of Venture?
I love that question. So we do also include dental and vision, but also, frankly, so that set of money, it's up to the employee and how they want to spend it. So, for example, you may decide, I just want to I don't go to the doctor that much. I just want to be covered for the basics. And then whatever you don't spend that the employer's given you goes into a health wallet that you can use to pay for massages, pay for acupuncture, pay for something that you really want that's going to keep you healthy or wealthier, or you could save it. So, but there's a whole, it's so flexible in terms of how you can use that money. And it just really why we're excited about this is it's about basically rethinking how we approach healthcare instead of, all right, I'm given this bundle of services. If you were given a budget, how would you use that to keep yourself healthy and wealthy and engage different services on the market?
So what is the full range of policy types that you're offering? Health, I've heard health, dental, vision. There's
Mm-hmm.
most companies offer, AD&D and
Mm-hmm.
employee assistance programs and so on and so forth. What else does your marketplace include?
So we've just started with those three for now. We
Okay.
have plans in the future to expand, but
Okay.
we can be paired with any of those other products that employers typically provide, like short-term disability, accident insurance, as you mentioned, and so on and so forth. So this is a product that works alongside some of those existing offerings.
So if my employer has allocated, let's say, $500 a month towards policies, I
Mhm.
can choose to use it. Or if I want to just spend it on massages every day, I
You
can
need to
just
have
get,
a, oh, I
how does that
apologize.
work?
Yeah, you
Yeah, no
have to
harm.
have a health plan. So that's the minimum. You can't
Okay.
just
Okay.
say, like, I'm going to use it for just use the cash. So that's one
Yeah.
important distinction. But usually, like, if you say you have $500 and maybe you spend 300 of that on insurance, then you would have $200 a month to, you might, like, if you go to the doctor and have a copay, you could use that money for that or something else. So.
Sure. So much more discretionary than here are three plans, choose one. And then if none of those really fit your needs, you're in trouble.
That's exactly right.
I've
How,
heard I've heard of something similar. Is this at all like I believe there's a company called People Keep?
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of them? How are you similar or different to their offering?
So we are quite similar to People Keep. We differ in approach, though. So People Keep does the employer administration of all this. So if you can think about it, the concept's really simple. Just give money, tax-free money, to employees. The administration of it is actually quite paperwork heavy and cumbersome. So both People Keep and us help employers to take care of that. Where we're different than People Keep is we believe that the employee should be guided in terms of if you go out and you have to shop on your own, that's scary. That's not pleasant.
Mhm.
So what we do is we have AI technology we've built. We also pair you with a benefits expert who guides you and helps you personalize your decision and provides you with the info to make that decision. So that's the key difference. We're all about making this a win-win for both not just the employer, the employee as well.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm sure Mike, I'm sure pretty much everyone has had a similar experience from navigating the health insurance
Mhm.
marketplace and landscape and thinking you have a pretty good handle on it, but you never do. It's always a slog. It's
Right.
always confusing to try and figure out what's best for you, for your employees, for your family. It is difficult to fully comprehend. So I'm sure having that expert to help walk you through
Mm.
to help you truly understand what
Yeah.
is the best plan combined with additional resources. That sounds like a very cool offering.
Yeah, we think so. Yeah.
Stacy, so just another question. If I then select a health plan and I have that $200 available to me every month, and I want to use it for cupping and massages and my gym membership, can I pick, can I use it for anything? And how do I get that money extracted or withdrawn from my account? Is there a credit card? Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so we are right now you would submit a claim to
Okay.
us and we would reimburse you through payroll. That's how it works today. Uh, And I do want to clarify. So basically, anything that's on the IRS list for HSAs or FSAs,
Mhm.
that's fair game
Right.
for the health wallet. So you could you would need a doctor's note to do your gym membership and show
Mhm.
that like that. But beyond that, it's actually really broad. So
Excellent.
Cool. Cool. Well, that sounds. I know Mike and I are excited, and our listeners, I'm sure, to learn more. But
Mhm.
let's take it back a step.
yeah.
Stacy, you mentioned that you grew up in a household or family of entrepreneurs. Would love to hear about your upbringing and how you caught the entrepreneurial bug.
Sure. So I come from, as I mentioned, family of entrepreneurs. My parents actually, they're both engineers. They had an engineering consulting business all throughout my childhood. And if you were to look at our garage, even today, it looks a little like a maker's lab. I think they had always had ambitions of building a product and launching, bringing something to the world and experimenting. Dinner at our house was about building robots. That said, though, I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm not an engineer. I went more the business route, and one thing, though, that did influence why we started Venteur was the first year of my dad's business and my mother's business. My dad got really sick, and healthcare became this cloud on the family. It became the biggest expense that we had as a family, even more than the family mortgage. And it changed everything about their business. All of a sudden, it's why they stayed consultants. All of a sudden, instead of being able to have the runway to develop your product, you had to make rent. And then I was 3 the first time my dad had a major episode, and I remember it still. And he also had young kids to think of too. So that's also where we see healthcare as this pain point for entrepreneurs that is not always talked about. You take on so much risk. Healthcare shouldn't need to be one of them. And I've lived through what it means to be in a family that's experiencing that, and that's really the origin story for the company of and why we're motivated to change healthcare.
Interesting.
So
So you go ahead.
go
Matt.
ahead, Donovan. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you saw obviously this pain point from a young age. Did you jump right into entrepreneurial work based on your parents' experience for some of your first jobs, or was this a later in your career decision?
Yeah. So yes and no. That's the answer to this. So I more so than the entrepreneurial bug had the travel bug. And that was the bigger urge earlier in my career. So I spent the first 15 years of my career in global development. I worked overseas. I worked in places like Afghanistan, Senegal, Vietnam. I oversaw when I left that career, I was overseeing an 18 country portfolio. And basically, the main question was, how do you lift people up from poverty? And I was designing foreign assistance programs, funding a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's actually where in the funding entrepreneurs and asking the question, how do you help create ecosystems and enabling environments that help businesses to grow? That's where I felt inspired and a little jealous, I'm not going to lie, of seeing people approach social impact solutions and addressing complex problems from an entrepreneurial lens, and knew that it's something I wanted to return to. And actually, before starting Venteur, I was a freelancer for about 3 years. And I left the job. Was a consultant based in Washington, D.C. originally, came back to California, where I'm from. And I feel like there's a saying with writers, like writers write what they know, entrepreneurs fix what they've lived. And that consulting space was the time that gave me the space to reflect on what I've seen overseas, what I've lived through, and connect the dots and basically create Venteur. So that's where I started to experience some of the pain points myself in being a freelancer and running a small business myself. So that's my story. Not a linear one, but one that like where entrepreneurship's definitely been there. But as you go through life, there are multiple competing interests, right? Like travel, family, starting a business, and this chapter right now that I'm in is the entrepreneurial bug is the loudest.
Is your business Venteur your first entrepreneurial like official engagement, and others were with working for other places, or have you had any other businesses? Did you start anything when you were young, or is this is kind of your launch of your entrepreneurial journey?
In a business sense, yes. I did have a consulting practice prior to this.
Okay.
So that would be immediately before this. That was the one that was kind of the playground that then This is the first startup though. I've been in community organizations,
Mhm.
and also like when like even if you're working in a big company and you're dropped overseas and you're the only one there, it can feel a lot like
Wow.
being a solo entrepreneur too. So, but this is the first one for sure.
I want to learn more about your overseas experiences, but I did see something in your background that I have in common with you, and I wanted to hear more about your experience.
Sure.
And that was your internship in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Oh yes, yes.
Tell us about that job.
That job. So I've actually interned for also the Senate side too, but from a field office. So have seen both the Senate and the House of Representatives. That was 2008, 2009,
Mhm.
and it was during the first 100 days of the Obama administration. It overlapped, so saw a lot of landmark legislation passed, worked for a member of Congress based here in California, and you learn so much.
Mhm.
And I think that's also, especially in working in something like healthcare, seeing the policy side, seeing the how the law that is made has
Yeah.
been a great foundation to what we're doing now.
What were you actually doing there, though?
Honestly, answering
Mhm.
phones and
Okay.
giving tours around the Capitol and
Yes. Same.
doing research sometimes. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's in practice, it's not that glamorous
Yeah.
as you might know.
So were you originally interested in pursuing a career in politics?
I was, yeah.
Okay. And then that kind of shifted into, well, I guess it's one somewhat, what is it, two sides of the same coin with the global development work that you were doing.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And they all go together, right? You can't change a system without thinking about the politics and the market. And both are levers. I think the thing that I'm interested, the common thread throughout my career is I am interested in social change. I think what attracts
Mhm.
me to this problem right now that we're solving is, healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America. It's tied back to
Mm.
a economic welfare issue, and uh, I'm now approaching it from a markets perspective. But there is also a solution from a policy perspective, and
Mhm.
they go together.
Absolutely. From your work abroad, are there any stories that come to mind that are especially inspiring or memorable, or entrepreneurs that you encountered or worked with that you found to be very unique and that you still take guidance from in your work today?
Absolutely. So many. A few off the top of my head. The ones my go-to and who I think about. I had the privilege of working on women's economic empowerment in Afghanistan and met hundreds of Afghan female entrepreneurs, and some who were running their business during the 90s, during the Taliban era. It's a little different now to think about it, given recent events that happened last year in Afghanistan. But what inspires me about them is that their resilience, the fact that that they exist at all. Actually, when I was first starting to go to Afghanistan, people would say, "Oh yeah, no, women don't do this," and then you start getting a network to certain communities, and you realize there's this really rich ecosystem. And actually, when you bring these women to meet them at trade shows, they're often the ones making the first deals, the biggest deals, and making their business despite sometimes literally facing death threats. And
Wow.
also just access to resources, access to capital, just incredible odds. And it's just it's so inspiring. So I think that the lesson I take away from them is one of resilience and one of resourcefulness.
What were some of the businesses that they were running?
There is one who was doing a silk factory actually,
Okay.
and she employed dozens of women in her community, and they were exporting scarves and knitwear
Hmm.
regionally as well. There was also uh, Afghanistan has a very rich agricultural industry. Although that is it's recent events with the conflict. It's having a hard time now, but there were a lot of food exporters as well and importers too.
Cool. And was it technically illegal for them to be running these businesses?
Not the time I was in country,
Okay.
but in eras in the past,
Yeah.
yes. Also, one of the things that was hard was access to finance. Like even if you changed the law and made it legal, there were some financial institutions who were still not providing access to capital, even if they were totally bankable. These are totally bankable businesses. So,
how frustrating.
So would you help with more of the business development and strategy side, more on the funding side? Kind of where did you come in?
sure. So my job was to both on program management and program design. So usually in this goes across different countries I've worked in. The two governments would decide we think this is a priority, and we're going to set aside this amount of funds. And then I would often work with teams on the ground and research and scope and interview and just look for entry points for change and see like how best to spend this money and to get the outcomes that we wanted to get.
Okay.
What was it like for you personally to be there, to live there, your living quarters, the food, friendship, communication back to your family? Like how was that whole experience?
The first time I went, I didn't tell my parents. I told them I was going to a totally different country, and
Oh my
I
God.
remember that they actually asked me. They're like, "Oh, we saw this place had a earthquake. Are you okay?" And I, had to Google and was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And then when I got home, I told them. And the reason why I did that, I know I sound like a huge liar, but like I just didn't want to hear it. So, and I was also I got all the way to the final flight and it was good to go. And then on the final flight, panicked, and I remember just listening to music on repeat to try to calm down. So that's why I did it to calm myself down. But in terms of living quarters, actually, I mean, it depends. I traveled through 8 different provinces and lived in guest houses, lived in on military bases sometimes, and lived in, those are the 2 most common. So
Okay.
it's such a beautiful country, and at the time it was a period of optimism too, where things were changing for the better. Not not it's the thing. There were also problems. Don't get me wrong, but you could see progress every day.
So you had mentioned you were living somewhere else overseas besides Afghanistan?
Yeah, so I've spent time in over 20 countries. So Philippines, Myanmar,
Wow.
Vietnam, Indonesia, primarily South and South, Bangladesh, South and Southeast Asia. Also, as a consultant, got to go to the Middle East and Africa, Jordan, Senegal. The best trip, well, they're all special, but I remember one time as a consultant, I got a job. I got a call on a Friday and said, like, "Can you go to Fiji?" And I was like, "Well, twist my arm. I guess I'll do it." And spent a month in the Pacific. So,
Nice.
yeah.
You've had an exciting life and you're very young.
Yeah.
That's-
Well,
You,
thank you.
you're done. You don't need to go anywhere. You can just hang out in California the rest of your life.
No, so many new
You've
adventures.
seen the world. Now you need to adventure out into like the Midwest. Some
Actually,
beautiful sites in Iowa. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
we were. I lived in Minneapolis for 5 months last year. We were part of the United Healthcare TechStars Accelerator. So,
Oh, cool.
you're right. The Midwest is awesome. You maybe have been joking, but I think it's awesome.
Minneapolis is an exception. Most of the Midwest is just nothing. It's just corn. So, but I love Minneapolis. There's some nice pockets, but
Having grown up there, I'm biased, but I feel that the Twin Cities and Chicago are the top 2 attractions in the Midwest. So it sounds like I'm glad that you've had some time there. So what inspired you to come back stateside? It sounds like Venteur well, both with your own consulting, then Venteur is very much just in the US currently, correct?
It is just in the US, and it will be for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
But I mean, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So I haven't traveled in since COVID, and I was still doing development work probably for a year into COVID, but doing it over Zoom. It's no fun. So probably but that also that practice of sitting still and staying still is probably what created the space for Venteur to come.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, obviously, you hit on your parents' experience and your experience growing up as the inspiration for the business. But was this an idea that you said you co-founded it with your brother?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That both of you had been toying with and discussing for a while, or was COVID kind of the trigger that finally pushed you two over the edge to say, we're doing this? How did you finally decide to start Venteur?
So COVID was the trigger.
Okay.
And it was actually, so I was still working in global development at the time. I was consulting. Consulting was going well. I started hiring employees, and my employees started moving around during the pandemic. And actually, one of them, I got a call one day. So this is the exact moment that an employee, they couldn't use the health plan that we had as a company. The carrier was saying you could drive 4 hours to get care. I don't know how that was ever an acceptable response. Or you can cancel the policy and renegotiate it. And we did the latter, and it meant everybody in the company had to pay more and got less care. And that was the like trigger point to like, it's almost like a thread, you know, and then you keep pulling at it, but of like, oh, this is a terrible experience. And probably 3 months after that, Venteur was founded. That triggered the idea to look into it, and we have continued to evolve ever since. So.
And was it always your intention to go into business with your brother, or how did that come to be?
So Tim joined, so my brother's name's Tim.
Okay.
He joined probably 6 months after Venteur was founded. He was definitely an advisor from the start. And actually, Tim is my litmus test. So before Venteur, I pitched so many ideas, and he was like, oh, that's so stupid, Stacy, don't do that. And Venteur was the first one where he was like, this doesn't suck. And then he saw, after we launched our first MVP, he's like, oh, you're serious. And he had helped us with that. But I think it was like seeing the progress of the business and then having those conversations. Then he decided to join full time shortly after that as well. So I think we had thought about doing something together for years. It's just about what, and he has shot down, I say this lovingly, he's shot down a lot of really terrible ideas of mine. So it was just what idea do we want to solve together?
Interesting. So has your sibling relationship changed since you've gone into business together? And if so, how has that developed or shifted?
So when you work together, you versus just being siblings, it's very strange because on one hand, this is a person you know so well. My brother was born the day before my first birthday. Like there's no memory I have where he's not there. But at the same time, we up until this point we had not worked together professionally. So it was like getting to know a new person and getting to know how he ticks professionally and what his skill sets are. We knew them at a high level. Like he is the engineer. I am the go out and build partnerships, more business development, like communicator, that person. And that's actually where we knew we had at a high level skill sets that complement each other. It's just getting to things we've had to reconcile. I'm more of a risk taker. That's not to say he's not a risk taker. It's just more, like I mean, I'll go to a war zone and not think twice about it. He's more measured. He's more measured than, so getting on the same page about risk tolerance, getting on the same page about pace, getting on the same page about how we make decisions. So we've learned a lot, and how we fight too. So how we were going to resolve disputes.
What kind of major challenges are you guys facing with the business, and like what are you doing to take it to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the biggest thing right now is just getting the word out, and also earning trust. So like, we run quotes and we show businesses the math of, I can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the business is like, but can you really? And especially, like when you come to a business with that kind of data, of course it feels too good to be true. It's not. And that's where we're slowly, we have an amazing cohort of initial customers, and we're building that trust, and having more and more proof points to show people this is a better way to do health insurance.
So
Are you a venture-backed business?
We are, yes.
Yeah, nice.
And do you sell, I'm assuming it's B2B, just directly to companies like procurement division or like health or HR divisions? Is that kind of your target audience?
That's correct.
Okay. And any specific vertical or size that you like to work with?
We are like, right now, our sweet spot has been in the 30 to 40 headcount range. We are starting to talk to firms that are in the hundreds. So we'll let you know, that's an evolving question. Honestly, what sparks joy for me is seeing people, be like, oh man, I got to keep my doctor. I got to do this. I got to do that. Like, it's a chance for an employee to be selfish and not think about, how's this going to impact the group? It doesn't matter. Do you. And really seeing that employee satisfaction. That's what we see. And that can be done at a business of one. There are some businesses just on a referral basis will help out a founder who's just getting started to do an individual plan, and just do a quick consultation to businesses of 100. So it's about the individual having great healthcare.
Okay.
Who inspires you? It sounds like your parents might be two of those people, but who are your mentors throughout this process?
So my mom, really. The reason why she came to this, she's an immigrant from Taiwan, came to the country in the 70s, and her perseverance, coming from from literally nothing, not having, she ran out of money at various points in grad school, and has this incredible story of after she completed her degree, and got a job, but didn't have all the paperwork to take that job, in terms of visa status. Didn't have enough money to go back to Taiwan either. And she was in the Midwest. So a family in the Midwest just randomly took her in. It was and just housed her for months. And then finally she got a company in Taiwan to sponsor her. She got a job, and they paid for the plane ticket back. And on the way back, this Midwest family had told her to come to San Diego just to see La Jolla. It was one of their favorite places. And I actually grew up in San Diego. The reason why is my mom, on that beach, she would take us to the beach in La Jolla and say, this is where I stood. And I felt like a failure because I was on my way home. But I said I was going to make it. I was going to live here. I was going to make it in America. And it took years, but she eventually did. And I ended up growing up in San Diego, and in that kind of, it has this dream mystique. So I think from her, I learned perseverance, and that, you may strike out the first time, don't give up, but also just how to make something from nothing as well.
That's a nice story.
Yeah, for sure. And with entrepreneurship, I know you alluded to it with both your experience and your mom's. There's certainly a roller coaster, lots of ups and downs and mistakes and triumphs along the way. Anything through the first, you said the 18 months, that's how long with Venteur. Any mistakes that you've made that you have learned from that maybe our listeners could benefit from hearing about?
Yeah, so many. But the one I'll admit to uh, is it comes down to not trusting my gut. So in coming into healthcare, coming into tech as an outsider, as this being a new industry for me, when I first started, you get a lot of feedback as an entrepreneur, and one of the things that you have to learn to do is accept that feedback, but know when to also ignore that feedback. And there were moments where it was like, should have trusted my gut, even though you may be the expert. You're so wrong, and my gut was like so against the grain, and it takes a bit of audacity, right? It's like, what do I know? Like I'm like not the expert in the space, but uh, every single time, and luckily it hasn't happened that much, but like every single time it has, I have regretted not going with my gut and like just deferring to because I thought, oh, you're an expert, I should listen to you. And that's not to say you shouldn't listen to experts. It's a balance, but yeah, trust your gut.
That's
Yeah,
good. Good
it's
advice.
tough to synthesize advice when it is coming from so many different sources, from investors to mentors to family to customers, and you're hearing a lot of conflicting things. So parsing through that can be quite challenging. And I think you're spot on that at the end of the day, you have to trust in yourself and what you feel to be the best course. And hopefully that's what works out.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much unsolicited advice you get too.
Yeah.
Like no one asked you. Like keep your mouth shut. But
Oh,
no,
that's
I like it. It's good, but it's hard to sift through and understand what you should be listening to and what you should realize is terrible advice to take you down the wrong path. What other nuggets of wisdom can you share with our listeners? What else have you learned? If you wanted to leave our listeners with a few additional tips, what would those be?
I think, the main thing is uh, take care of yourself. That's that you often are as the entrepreneur. You are the business. That's a though that mindset can have its shortfalls, but it your growth depends on as the business often depends on you staying healthy, and sometimes taking that break actually can be the best thing you do for your business, and to just not forget your own
Mhm.
welfare in
Yeah.
that. So
How do you do that, Stacy? How do you stay sane when the business becomes overwhelming?
well, sometimes it's circumstance specific. Actually, one hobby and practice I've started Reiki. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. This is actually it's an energy healing practice. That's maybe on the extreme side, but
Mhm.
it's kind of linked to Tai Chi and meditation in concept. But
Mhm.
I've gotten into that because just deliberately needing to shut down my brain and to deliberately set my mind of like releasing, like letting go of anxiety, like trusting, like this is gonna work out, and like try. It's almost like wiping away the slate clean, so to
Mhm.
speak. So there's something for everyone. This is my particular practice.
Can
So
you elaborate on that?
yeah, so it's comes from this. The concept is basically like any energy transfer. So it's the idea that like a Reiki healer is moving that, like if you have an either emotional or physical issue, that there's an energetic blockage. That's kind of the premise there, and that the healer is directing energy toward that uh, wherever you need it to unblock that uh, energy. But it's what it kind of feels like sometimes is somebody like running an eraser uh, toward over your body. So this may be too more mystical than for some of your listeners than others, but even just I think there is an element of a placebo effect at a minimum of for and just think about it as meditation in some regards of I'm going to calm my mind and I'm going to deliberately think about letting go of certain anxieties and certain stressors, and that's where it's been really powerful for me. So yeah,
Sounds
if you're
sounds
getting into my
interesting.
more spiritual side or
Yes.
mystical side.
I like it. Well, on that note, I know you are a busy entrepreneur. We don't want to take up too much of your time. Really appreciate you spending the last 45 minutes with us today. Sure. And it was a very insightful, enlightening conversation. We really appreciate it.
Likewise, and it was such a pleasure to meet both of you.
Same here.
Thanks, Stacy.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Take care.
Everybody got a dream, let me show you all love. From an idea, working it into a startup. This the show that you need, what more could you ask for? Never know who become the CEO next door. Tune in, every episode insightful. The type of vibe you will want to subscribe to. Let's go. Hey.